A lot of the painting videos you will see on this channel, be it now or in the future, are absolutely not intended to attract a single level of painter or to necessarily act as tutorials. I think that the process of painting models is far more useful, whatever your skill level, than a step-by-step guide, because realistically, 90% of the time you won't want to precisely photocopy someone else's paint scheme anyway. That said, I am conscious that some of those drawn to this channel will be those who have never picked up a brush, particularly board gamers drawn to some of our miniature board game content, or those that have tried before and have been disappointed by the results, but perhaps feel the time has come to try again. With this in mind, it is useful for us all to have some common basic tools, tips and terminology in our mind, particularly for those things that I refer to in almost every video that gets published on the channel. When I started painting 25 years ago, I didn't understand the importance of any of these tools. Hell, I hadn't even heard of some of them. But they are all things that a beginner could use and benefit from, and that accelerated my painting journey once I understood them. That's not to say more experienced painters might not benefit from these tools if you are not already using them, but those that have been in the hobby for some time are unlikely to find anything groundbreaking in this video. For the purpose of this video, I'm assuming that your starting point is that of the vast majority of people I have met that paint miniatures, i.e. that you are painting by hand rather than using an airbrush, and that you're using acrylic paints. To be clear, none of what I'm going to tell you in this video is inviolate. Exceptions prove the rule, especially with miniature painting, but if it's one thing that the last 25 years of life has taught me, it's that sometimes you need to know some of the rules to help you know how to break them. One mistake most miniature painters make is not to consider that the paints they use may not be the correct consistency for their chosen technique straight from the bottle. Water may be readily available, but to dilute your paints and how much to dilute them is not something that is necessarily readily apparent to a newcomer, and it is made more complicated by paints of different ranges not being a consistent starting dilution. This starting dilution will often be too thick for use on miniatures, however. This is deliberate, to allow you to dilute to the consistency that you prefer, but if you don't dilute at all, there is a good chance that the small details on the models you are painting may become obscured, especially if you are applying multiple coats or have to correct mistakes. As you grow as a painter, you will encounter mediums, flow improvers and all manner of other additives that can be used to change the properties of your paint, along with entirely different paint types such as oils and enamels. That said, I still use water most of the time when using acrylic paints. How much should you dilute your paints? I've seen entirely useless descriptions on other YouTube channels such as to the consistency of milk or other such analogies, and I was determined to try to come up with a better explanation. But just remember that all I'm describing is a general rule. In some cases a thicker paint may be preferable. It is also perfectly possible to over-dilute to the point of losing coverage with your paint, but there are certain painting techniques for which this is essential. For a standard base coat consistency, if your paint is able to defy gravity, it is likely too thick for your needs. What I mean by this is that if you can manipulate it with the brush so that it can be heaped on your palette, holding its own shape in a lump to some extent, you may need to add more water. Conversely, if when you hold the palette vertically the paint runs away, then you may have added more water than is ideal for a general purpose coat of paint. Instead, we're looking for the paint to lie flat on the palette, to run smoothly from the brush, but not to be so runny that it won't stay put. This may take some practice, and there's no set dilution ratio I can give you because all paints are a little different, but it is worth experimenting. Above all, remember that most paints that you use will require at least some dilution. This alone will make achieving better results a lot easier. Normal acrylic miniature paints will not adhere properly to plastic, metal or resin miniatures unless those miniatures have been coated in a primer first. Whilst you can get away without a primer, it generally creates an uphill battle that I wouldn't wish on any beginner painter. However, my recommendation goes a bit further than just priming your miniature in a single colour. How you light your model is extremely important to the final result. When I started painting, it was not intuitive to me that I should add shadow and highlight to my miniatures when painting them. I think we all probably have some sense that this is necessary for 2D art forms. For example, a painting where the light hitting the flat surface will create no sense of depth on its own. However, this is also important for miniature painting. as models are generally too small for ambient light to create enough contrast through shadows that the details of the model can be seen from a distance. Zenithal priming kicks off this process of adding contrast by showing you where the highlights and shadows would be if the model was lit from above by sunlight. It is essentially the technique of using multiple priming coats, with the later coats being directed from the light source, usually from above. This leaves darker primer anywhere that shadows would be present and aids you in recognising how light would fall on the miniature, helping you to introduce more realistic lighting to your painting. I like to do this by spraying the entire model black, and then once this has dried, spraying the model from above with a lighter tone such as white or grey. Sometimes I will even spray from a 45-degree angle using grey and then directly from above using white, as this creates a slightly smoother blend of primer, but this isn't always necessary on smaller models. A word of caution, however, it is possible to put down too thick a layer of primer, especially using a spray primer, and using multiple coats of primer on one miniature clearly increases the risk of doing so. Ensure that you read the manufacturer's instructions to determine how far your spray can should be from the miniature, and try not to prime in extremely wet or extremely dry conditions. Furthermore, as anyone who saw the hydropainting video will verify, it is important that each coat is properly dried before the next is applied. As to which spray you should use, I find Army Painter spray primers are reasonably priced and generally effective, but any primer designed for miniature painting, and even a few that are not, should be fine as long as you check the instructions. The fumes from aerosol primers are extremely dangerous, so please use them outdoors and use an appropriate grade of face mask to prevent inhalation. Of all of the tools on this list, the wet palette made the biggest difference to my painting journey. Whether you make one of your own or buy a brand, you will find it assists your mixing of paints, your consistency, and provides a number of other benefits. Wet palettes vary, but usually have some sort of absorbent material, such as a sponge, which is just saturated with water. On top of this, some form of palette paper is applied to which paint can be laid down. This keeps the paint wet for longer, improving working time, and if the palette has a lid, you can cover it over after each layer and return without the paint drying in between. This isn't really about saving money by wasting less paint, although this is absolutely a benefit. Having all the colours that you have used in a project to hand until you finish that project means that you can easily correct mistakes or return to previous blends. My recent hydro painting video is an excellent example of how much utility you can get from a wet palette. I could highly recommend Redgrass Games wet palette if you are buying one. Whilst it is by no means the cheapest on the market, it fixes a lot of my frustrations with other wet palettes, including those that I have made myself. However, you could absolutely make a wet palette out of things you already have in your kitchen cupboard, and it will work effectively. There are many tutorials online as to how to do so, but if you want me to explain on the channel, drop a comment and I'll consider it for a future video. So, you're painting a miniature, maybe 28mm to its eye line from its feet. It's a small thing, a tiny thing really. So, naturally you are going to want the smallest brush you can find, right? Maybe not. It's worth saying that the amount of paint and water on your brush is an extremely important factor in the control that you will have when adding paint to the miniature. Generally, you will not want the brush to be saturated. However, using a larger brush allows a larger reservoir of paint to be captured by the brush, and therefore increases the time that you have to apply paint before having to refill your brush. Conversely, paint will dry faster on smaller brushes as they hold less paint, and this may see you rinsing your brush more frequently. Over larger areas of the model, especially at moments where accuracy is not important and speed is desirable, a small brush will hinder rather than help. The quality of the point on your brush, the consistency of your paint, and how waterlogged your brush is will all have a much bigger effect on your final result than the size of your brush. As a general rule, and it's a rule that I forget even to this day, use the largest brush that you feel you can get away with for the size of the detail that you are painting. It is worth having a few brushes of different sizes, but I personally find a range of 3 sizes, i.e. small, medium and large, whatever that means to you, to be more than sufficient for my needs. In the case of dry brushing, it may also help to have some small brushes designed for makeup on hand, as any brush designed to be soft on your face will be ideal for this particular technique. You can, of course, buy a great diversity of brushes, ranging from specialist brushes costing a lot of money to bargain brushes, but it really isn't necessary to spend a lot of money on brushes when you are just starting out, and doing so may not be preferable if you are still learning how to care for your brushes effectively. Do not, under any circumstances, touch your model with your bare hands while you are painting. Okay, maybe this is a do as I say, not as I do scenario, but I did say we would learn together. Having something to fix your model to when painting is ideal, as no matter how clean your hands are, the oils that emerge from the pores on your skin will affect the way that your paints behave on the model and may remove previous layers of paint. The best thing about this tool is you don't need a specialist product, just something that fits in your hand comfortably and that you can blue tack a model to. An old spray bottle lid or a block of wood is ideal. If it rests on your table when you're in between coats, then that's also an advantage. If you do want to spend money on this tool, I haven't tried enough different products to give a full recommendation, but I can tell you that I don't rate the Games Workshop painting handles very highly, as I find them uncomfortable. In fact, I've dropped more models using this product than I have using my homemade versions of it. I am currently enjoying using Redgrass Games painting handle, but there are plenty of other options that I'm sure would be equally effective. I hope the above is useful whatever your skill level, and furthermore that these tips increase your enjoyment of my upcoming painting videos, as you will be better able to understand the tools and terms that I use. If you are an experienced painter and think I have left out a key tool, drop a comment below and help the less experienced members of our growing community to evolve their skills. It is worth saying that while I believe all these tools will help you improve, none of them will automatically make you better at painting miniatures. While different artists learn at different speeds, there is simply no substitute for experience when painting. Above all, keep persisting with your painting journey, celebrate every small success, and try to practice every day that you can. I genuinely believe that anyone can learn to paint to a good standard with patience and determination. Hopefully the videos on this channel will serve as inspiration to help you get where you want to be. Until we meet again, work hard, play better, and take care out there.